What is a saying you've heard a million times but haven't accepted it until it happened to you? Put it away while you have it in your hand. My mom used to pee me off saying this to me. Now I realize it is one of the smartest things you can do. At first I thought you were talking about your dong. The days are long but the years are short. There are days that just drag on forever, but I still can't believe how fast the years have gone by. Measure twice, cut once. I don't understand, I've cut it twice but it's still too short. Whenever someone dies and then somebody says but I just saw them yesterday, I always thought that was the dumbest thing to say because since you saw them they died, crap happens. Then my grandma came to visit and the next day she died. When I found out, the first thing I said was but I just saw her yesterday. I lost a friend over the weekend. It's exactly that emotion. I just saw you. I just saw you. We had put money down on adventures this summer. You're not just gone. This sucks. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. Seriously, it's amazing how many enormous problems could have been averted if I'd waited and thought before I spoke. Checked, wrecked. Dry heat. I grew up in the Midwest and only knew pain and suffering in the humidity. Now I'm in the desert and 95 truly feels like 80. I love dry heat. I live in Texas, traveled across the country in the summers, and let me tell you, I will take 115 in Sacramento, California over 81 degrees with humidity in Louisiana any day. I felt my blood run cold. Always thought that was just an expression, but after getting some traumatic family news, having to deal with the reality of that news, it literally felt like ice was running through my veins. It was the worst, weirdest feeling ever. I could also hear the deafening sound of blood pounding and rushing through the veins arteries in my head. A psychologist later told me that it was my body's response to the psychological shock of the news. It's like your body realizes its own mortality. You can never go home again. When you are a kid and in school, you are home. When you graduate and move away for college and come back to visit and see friends, it isn't home anymore. It just doesn't feel right. Much of what made it home is gone. I know what you mean. Both my parents were working professionals, so my grandma practically raised me. Her house was my home, but after she passed away it changed. It felt so empty and was no longer my home. Don't crap where you eat. Seriously, don't date a co-worker unless you hate your job anyway. The number of they said they felt threatened and I lost my job stories is far greater than and that's how I met your mother stories. Don't stick your pen in company ink. Every bit of lies. Haven't heard it a million times, but enough after 8 seasons of House to know it's remarkably accurate. When trying to impress women, just be yourself. Be yourself the way you are with your best friends. Even if the moon is full, you can still get fricked by a goat. I always thought my grandpa was being silly. Now I know better. Eli 5. It takes one heck of a man to be better than no man. I'm sure this could be true for a woman as well. My mother used to say this to me all my life, and I always thought she was just jealous because I always had boyfriends. Throughout my life, I always had to have a significant other. I couldn't stand on my own 2 feet equals codependent as heck. When I lost my husband to liver disease in 2009, I decided I would not be with anyone else. Now, I realize it would take one heck of a man to make me want to share my life with someone again. I enjoy my own company and being able to do what I want when I want. I first read this as an ego thing. I guess your description works too. I'm really late to this, but in high school I was known for always having pencils on me, so people would constantly come up to me when they forgot theirs to borrow mine. I got annoyed at this eventually because I wouldn't always get them back and stuff, so I collected a bunch of crappy pencils off the ground and whatnot that I wouldn't use. I'm a Ticonderoga nerd through and through, and use those as my lending pencils. So anyway, this kid asks me for a pencil and I give him one of the inferior borrowing pencils with the crappy erasers that don't really work, and he says, "Man, come on, give me one of the good erasers." And I reply, "Well, beggars can't be choosers." He took a second, got an enlightened look on his face, and told me he had never actually understood that phrase until then. He took the crappy pencil. I've had a similar experience. The difference was that once I gave out crappy pencils, people stopped asking. My son is adopted from Haiti and I got him when he was 20 months old. He's brilliant. He's so funny and probably the most spookily observant person I've known. It wasn't until I was given this amazing gift that I was punched in the face with a mind is a terrible thing to waste. How much of humanity are we tossing in the trash, rather than benefiting from their unique gifts? Not even in the third world but even the ones who fall into the growing cracks in the West? I always wondered about this. Imagine how many Mozarts or Newtons lived, grew up and died in some country like Zimbabwe without ever using their prodigious talents because they weren't exposed to it or had the resources to explore it. Whenever we'd complain to our dad, saying it's not fair, he'd respond, life's not fair. You'll learn that as you get older. Yup. People who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Except replace people who live in glass houses with people who own a nice glass coffee table. Also, I'd have to replace the word stones with children. So, people who own a nice glass coffee table shouldn't throw children. Agreed. Life is what you make of it. At the end of the day, if you don't do something that you reasonably aspire to, you have yourself to blame, not your circumstances. It's tough to accept, but ultimately, I had to figure out that opportunities are not going to come up to my door, knock, and say, "Hi there, I'm the opportunity that is going to bring you happiness in life." Practice gets you everywhere. You run into one butthole during the day, he's in butthole. You run into 2 buttholes during the day, they're buttholes. You run into 20 buttholes a day, you're the butthole. I apply it to a girl I was dating. She had a history where every boyfriend was a jerk, loser, etc. I thought I could change that, but it turns out she's crazy and likes the instability and dysfunction of certain relationships. You just learn to live with the pain when you lose someone you love. I never had anyone close in my family die, so when I would hear that it didn't affect me, then my dad died and now I know exactly how it feels. R.I.P. Dad. Houses are broken into and burglarized. Never knew anyone it had happened to, but it happened to me. Kinda surreal. It's pretty disturbing walking into your own home and having all of your stuff gone or destroyed. That summer sucked. Don't run with sticks. Playing ball hockey in a school gym. Tried to poke the ball forward with one hand while running up the court. My stick went into the door jamb and locked in place, and I ran full tilt into the butt end. Basically skewered myself on the end of a hockey stick. Ouch. Luckily the stick shattered into a million pieces, otherwise I probably would have ruptured my liver. Ouch. Well, at least you're not hungover. For a more positive spin, I didn't realize that weak in the knees was actually a physical thing. I really hit it off on a date and had some trouble going downstairs after. It is hard to believe it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 20 seconds to destroy it until you get to the point where you actually can feel a long-term reputation take a hit from a single misstep. Be careful what you wish for, you might actually get it. For over a decade I lived in a tiny house on a tiny lawn in the ghetto. It was fine for younger me, but as I got older, found a wife and had kids, it became a little cramped. After the first kid, I started saying I'd give my left nut for a bigger house with a bigger yard. Fast forward 4 years, we weren't even house hunting, because the housing market for selling a home in the ghetto sucked. But come to find out, someone is flipping the house next door to some old college friends of mine, who also have kids. So we decide to keep an eye on it. Right around the same time I find I had developed testicular cancer. During the months of negotiation with the homeowner on a sale price, I had my left nut removed and went through a month of radiation therapy. We moved in 2 months after my therapy was over, and all of this happened over the course of the year after I turned 40. My old house has been rented out to some college students who just this week renewed their lease for another year. Don't get me wrong, I'd do it all over again without a second thought, but seriously, be careful what you wish for. Put yourself before your relationships. In high school and a bit further, every relationship I had, the relationship came first. I would devote every moment I could in the prospect of someone being the one. But I've realized that these relationships are so unlikely to go anywhere. It's better to assume it's going to end, and make every moment of it and around it the best I can. There's no need to become invested, nor any reason to completely change your life for a new relationship. Just treat it as just dating and you won't get hurt and will have a fine time doing it. I used to work with a guy that had just gotten out of a 14-year stint in prison. His advice was, butthole feels like butthole. It doesn't matter if it's a man's or a woman's. Always forgive. When you go through life and people maliciously hurt you, it never makes sense to forgive. But in reality, forgiving means moving on and letting go. Let yourself move past the hurt. Let go of the anger. At the end of the day, your anger never makes them change. It just changes you. So, always forgive. Holding a grudge is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. You're not my type. Remember, you have types that you are more or less attracted to, and so do other people. So if you're a redhead who doesn't date Asians but loves black men, don't take it personal if that black man is not into redheads, but totally digs Hispanics. Very true. And it also means that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. There are no beautiful and ugly people, only ones who you personally find beautiful and ugly. You can't step in the same river twice. It's a paraphrase of a Mark Twain quote, I think. It's along the same lines as you can't go home again, and blended with hindsight is 20/20. Make sure you've done what you need to, because the opportunity may not be there again. Change and progress are constant, and at no point does a person meet up with a situation twice in the same circumstances. Positive, negative and everything in between. Didn't make sense at 16. It's my life motto at 30. Back in my day, or whatever variation of that, no one ever truly understands this until they hit struggles as an adult. My parents are from rural villages, small towns in Vietnam, who immigrated to the US with nearly nothing. Through their work, I grew up comfortably middle class. I had never gone back to Vietnam until I went for a medical mission trip in undergrad. It's one thing to see poverty or underserved populations firsthand, but it's a surreal experience to realize, holy frick, he could have been my neighbor. That could have been me. The random statistical improbability that my dad's family made it to the US on a boat, that my mom was picked up by the US military, that they met in the US, that they worked through college teaching themselves English, that they gave me the gift of never knowing true poverty. It blows my mind how different my life could have been. I've never been so humbled before until those moments I realize how much my parents suffered to give me the comfortable life I live today. No one asks for this crap. Boss, in reference to a man getting let go due to abusive substances. Overall, I dislike this boss I refer to and don't agree with him on a lot. But I'll be damned if I don't listen and learn from people who have more experience than I do. The guy was a good worker but had been struggling with addiction for a while. He messed up and got let go. My boss was talking with a friend of mine and he said it sank in really hard because I liked the guy who messed up. The point is, people aren't born or grow up thinking I'm going to be an addict or I think I want to grow up to be a felon. Time heals all wounds. Oh my god. I saw my ex after 2 years and still felt the same. I'm about to throw up, and who is this poltergeist trying to rip my heart out of my chest? I thought to myself, why won't this torment end, and hid around a corner so we wouldn't see each other. About 6 months later I ran into them at a party. We greeted each other and hugged. I waited for the feelings and hatred and poison to start coursing through my body. It didn't come. I was fine. I was happy. We were happy. Now, with the experience of that, I just accept that it may hurt now, it may hurt later, but it's not going to hurt forever. I did not know that until it happened. Don't work too hard. Found out the hard way after having a serious case of occupational burnout at 28. It affected my health so bad that I went in for blood tests to make sure I didn't have something seriously wrong with me. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.